We are expecting Israel's Prime Minister to the United States in a few minutes. He's scheduled to be here in 3, 4, 5 minutes. Obviously, it's a very busy day for him. He is said to be the closest confidant that Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's Prime Minister, has, certainly among the top. And interestingly, he was born in Miami Beach, Florida, and he was an American citizen up to 2005. He became a senior official in the Israeli government, was required to surrender his U.S. citizenship. He's an Israeli citizen. He's a member of the Likud party. He went to the University of Pennsylvania and Oxford University. So this is a man who is heavily influenced by and knowledgeable about our country, this country. And he's been on the program before. He wrote a best-selling book with Sharansky, The Case for Democracy, the Power of Freedom to Overcome Tyranny and Terror. I'm not going to put him on the spot. That's not my purpose in having guests here, to put him on the spot about our administration and our administration's reaction. What I want to know is how Israel and Israelis, and the government in particular, how they, this is going to sound weird, but process this. I mean, I know it's an act of terror. So what happens now? All hands on deck? Netanyahu has already ordered the destruction of the homes of the two terrorists, the Palestinian terrorists. But, Abbas is out front with the West saying, this is terrible and we denounce it. And then behind the scenes, his people are celebrating, handing out candy to little kids. I don't know how you stop this when this indoctrination is going on. It is endless indoctrination that's going on. Josh Earnest at the White House briefing today was asked about this. Here's what he said. Cut 2, go.
At this sensitive moment in Jerusalem, it is all the more important for Israeli and Palestinian leaders and ordinary citizens to work cooperatively together to lower tensions, reject violence, and seek a path forward toward peace.
What does that mean? You're telling terrorists to reject violence? I mean, you have Hamas, which is in the Gaza Strip. That's what it's all about. Violence. You had violence today, and he's lecturing the Israelis. Why don't you all just get along? Pretty much, that's what he's saying. Let's lower tensions. The Israelis will react to this in ways I wish we would react when Americans are decapitated by this, what is he? That guy from Britain, that throwback, that subhuman cockroach. I wish we would react the way they react, but we don't. Or not enough. And there, I want to remind you, we have Ashley Banfield on CNN. Let's play this again. It is so stunning to me. Cut 3, go.
And then ultimately, when you're looking at, I think Americans can really identify with this, having been involved in a war on terror for 13 years. It is still a war. It is not just crimes. Effectively, there's a philosophical war going on, and soldiers come in all forms. And when you have mandatory conscription and service in Israel, effectively the Palestinians will say it's war against everyone because everyone's a soldier.
Stop right there. Ambassador Ronald Dermer, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you, Mark.
Well, it's a great honor to have you. I know this is a very upsetting day. I would like to know, I understand the Prime Minister has ordered that the homes that the terrorists are from to be abolished. What obviously, without giving out specifics, what does the Israeli government do when this is done? I mean, this is a real shock to the system.
Well, we just had a meeting of the Security Cabinet a few hours ago, and you heard the Prime Minister gave his public statement. He didn't say all the steps that he's going to take, but he's going to do whatever he has to do to defend the public. This is an attack, a savage attack in the heart of our capital, the murder of 4 Jews while praying. Now, in the last couple of hours, a Druze police officer succumbed to his injuries, and we appreciate very much the sacrifice that the Druze have made over the decades to help defend Israel, both in the army and in the police. And he'll take whatever action, the Prime Minister will take whatever action is necessary to defend Israel. And what we need, and we hope, will happen in the international community is that they will do something that they haven't done until today. First, send a very clear message to President Abbas that he's got to get out of his government with a bunch of terrorists who were celebrating today. You saw in the streets of Gaza people celebrating when Jews were massacred in a synagogue. And the international community has to send a very clear message to Abbas. End your pact with Hamas. and stop the incitement against Israel. Instead, what they're telling him is you can have your cake and eat it too. You can join up with Hamas and we'll give you a state for nothing. It doesn't even have to be at peace with Israel, and that's the wrong message. And if he continues to get the wrong message, he will continue to create a culture of incitement and hatred where these types of things happen.
And you're making very clear, Mr. Ambassador, that Abbas is not in the clear. He's not this innocent that people claim he is. He's not, in many respects, this moderate that people claim he is, correct?
Yeah, well, I'll explain to you exactly what he is. He is not Hamas. Hamas is openly committed to Israel's destruction. It's a terror organization recognized as such, not only by the United States, by the European Union, by Japan, by Egypt, and by most responsible countries around the world. He's not Hamas, but while he doesn't perpetrate terrorism, as Arafat, his predecessor, did, where he doesn't directly perpetrate terrorism or directly pay terrorists or order terrorists, he has not acted in any way against the terrorists. He has not stood up to the terrorists, and he is encouraging this climate of incitement and hatred where these attacks happen. In fact, just today, he supposedly condemned the action, but if you actually read the statement to your listeners on the show, you will find that half of the statement was a condemnation, and the other half was continued incitement against Israel and this wild claim that Israel is trying to harm the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You know, we're the only people in the Middle East, the Jewish people, who don't destroy religious sites. We protect religious sites. And President Abbas has been running around now in almost every forum he goes to and accusing Israel of trying to destroy, invade, harm, you name it, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And that is creating this type of environment which leads to the savage attacks that you saw today. And he's got to stop it. He's got to stop it, and the world has to hold him accountable for it.
And this mosque, the American people may not understand, this is a real hot-button issue. So he keeps running around pressing this hot button. Why is this a hot-button issue?
Well, this is referred to as the third holiest site in Islam after the holy sites in Mecca and in Medina in Saudi Arabia. And when Israel liberated Jerusalem in 1967, we didn't do something that other powers have done in Jerusalem. We didn't actually raise the holy sites of our enemies to the ground. That's what happened to us. In 1948, when the old city was conquered by Arab forces, they razed every synagogue in the old city of Jerusalem to the ground. They destroyed our holy sites. In fact, they took gravestones from the Mount of Olives and used it to pave latrines. That's what our enemies did. When we liberated Jerusalem, we gave the keys to this very holy site for Muslims on top of the holiest site in Judaism, the Temple Mount. We gave the keys to the Muslim religious authorities, and we say, you're going to be in charge of your holy sites, just as we gave the keys to the Christian holy sites to Christian leaders. The only time where religious sites have been protected in Jerusalem is when under Jewish sovereignty, under the sovereignty of the State of Israel. We're very proud of our record. We're not going to change anything on the Temple Mount. And there's a major problem when the leader of the Palestinians starts saying day after day after day that Israel is trying to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is a libel and a lie, which is leading directly to violence against us and the murder of our citizens. And the international community should be outraged by this and should tell President Abbas to stop, to get out of his government with a bunch of terrorists, and to end the incitement against Israel. That's the only way that he can be a potential peace partner in the future.
When you hear, I won't name any particular official because I don't want to put you on the spot, but when you hear officials say, all right, look, the Israelis and the Palestinians, you need to work together to lower tensions and reject violence. At a time like this, what does that mean to you?
Well, the problem is that a lot of people think that there is some cycle of violence, and there's not a cycle of violence. There hasn't been a cycle of violence for the last 100 years. What there has been is a determined effort to destroy first the pre-state Jewish community in this territory, and then after the birth of Israel, to destroy the state of Israel and to murder Jews. You know, just today people said that the reason why this is happening is because there's a breakdown in the peace process. And if only we could get past the peace talks, this would stop happening. Well, I remember 20 years ago when buses were blowing up in the mid-'90s, people said the reason why this was happening is because we are in a peace process, and these are the enemies of peace that are trying to stop the peace process. The reason why this is happening is not because there is a peace process or not a peace process. The reason why this is happening is because people are in an environment where where the Palestinians are glorifying the murder of Jews. When you name public squares after terrorists, don't be surprised to see this happen. And that's what the Palestinians do. If you look at what's in their media, what's in their schools, what they broadcast on their television stations, in their controlled media, you see the most wild incitement against Jews, and they raise a generation of Palestinians for the last 20 years. When this peace process has happened, they have raised a generation of Palestinians to hate Jews. That's what's happening there, and very few people focus on it. What they focus on is whether Jews are building apartments in Jerusalem. And I have to tell you, if people would spend a tenth of the time that they're spending focusing on Jews building apartments in Jewish neighborhoods in Jerusalem, which will have no impact whatsoever on our ability to reach peace with our Palestinian neighbors, if they would focus a tenth of the time on the incitement that happens day after day within Palestinian society, we would be much closer to peace than we are today.
Mm-hmm. I guess we haven't heard the final act of the Israeli government in respect to this, have we?
No. We've had a number of attacks that have happened over the last month. We have had a number of citizens who have been killed. We hope that we're able to lower the flames. There was a meeting last week in Amman. Secretary Kerry was there. King Abdullah was there. The Prime Minister was there. And they all worked together to try to lower tensions. The Prime Minister made clear then something that he has made clear from the beginning, that there will not be any change in the status quo on the Temple Mount, that Israel is not trying in any way to undermine, to harm, to in any way change the status regarding the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He made that clear. Unfortunately, when we were trying to do everything to douse the flames, President Abbas went and called for a day of rage the next day. It's unconscionable what he's doing. And if he only hears from the international community sort of a condemnation of this attack against Jews in a synagogue, which everybody who is decent anywhere condemns, but if he doesn't hear a very clear message from the international community that he has to stop, that he'll continue. And you know what he's hearing from the international community? He's hearing, you know what, we'll give you a state. Yes, you just joined up with a terror organization. You have a government with a terror organization. Yes, you're continuing to incite, but we're willing to recognize a Palestinian state today. That's what's happening in country after country in Europe. Now, if he can sit with terror organizations, continue to incite, and get everything he wants in the international community, what makes you think he's going to change his behavior? The only way we can change it is if he hears a different message. If the message that comes out from the international community is, if you stay in bed with a bunch of terrorists, we're not interested in you visiting our capitals. If you continue to incite your population to hate Jews and to murder Jews, we're not interested in speaking to you. If that's the message that he gets, then maybe you see the beginnings of a change. I hope that happens. It hasn't happened up until now, but maybe if anything good can come from this savage attack, maybe there'll be some change.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, please let the Israeli people know there are millions of Americans who stand behind them. This program there's a lot of Israelis who actually listen to this program on all the various platforms that are out there, satellite and internet and so forth. But we wish you all the best, and this was a particularly gruesome and outrageous slaughter in this synagogue. I mean, lopping off people's limbs and so forth, and I hope you kick their ass. That's just my opinion, but there you go.
Well, I see you're as diplomatic as ever, but I have to tell you, it's important for the American people to understand, and I think many do, that this is not just Israel's fight. That if we don't fight terrorism today in our neck of the woods, you're going to be fighting it tomorrow. What you have is a rising tide of militant Islam throughout the Middle East. And it pops up because you see a collapse of a structure of the Middle East that was in place for more or less for 100 years. And once that structure collapsed, you see militant Islam rising to the surface in different areas. You see ISIS in Iraq and Syria. You see, of course, Boko Haram in Africa. You see Hamas in Gaza. You see in Libya you have a problem of militant Islam. In Iraq you have a problem of militant Islam. In Yemen you have a problem of militant Islam. These are all different theaters and all have their particular local grievances, but they are all part of a broader ideology. And what we have to do in order to defeat this ideology is stand together. When terrorism succeeds in one theater, it is emboldened everywhere. And when terrorism is defeated in one theater, it is set back everywhere. That's why we have to stand together, and we appreciate the strong support that Israel appreciates the strong support that we have from the American people in confronting terrorism, and I can assure you that's exactly what we're going to do.
All right. God bless. Good luck, and take care of yourself.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. That's the ambassador from Israel to the United States, Ron Dermer.